Welcome to the Gray Hair Lady Show. This is a place where people of all ages can go to watch some interesting points of view. This is our story of a generation that has changed the world. Welcome to greyhairlady.com. Woohoo! Welcome! Welcome to greyhairlady.com. This is the Gray Hair Lady Show, and I am Melody Pepai, and I am your host. This is our second show. And we're very excited about having a certain guest because I think that he's very informative. He knows a lot about politics, and he will teach me a few things. But any announcements that I have to make is that please let your friends know that the show is live. Please let your friends know that people are above the age of 50. This is your place to go where you can share your stories about where you have been and what you have done. And I'm going to introduce my guest right now. I'm so excited about having this guest. And I want to introduce Gary Aminoff. Thank you. Welcome to Gray Hair Lady. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's nice of you to have on a gray hair man.
Well, I know that you are above the age of 50, and I know that you've been around. And that's what we're here for. We're here to talk about your life and where you've been. And I know that you're very involved in politics. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted this topic to be all about politics, is because of the fact that, we've seen it all. We've seen it all from the 50s to the 60s to the 70s or wherever we've been. But I think that we can share a lot of our experiences with other people, all about where we've been with politics. Okay, Gary, I'm going to get my questions out. Okay, so tell me something. What was it like being in the 60s and seeing people demonstrate against the government?
Well, it was very strange. The Vietnam War was going on. There was a lot of anti-war sentiment in the country at that time. I was very young. I just gotten out of college and had witnessed a lot of demonstrations, such as Eastern Europe, where they were demonstrating against their communist leaders and wanting freedom. So when we saw mostly young people, students, fighting against the American government because they were anti-war activists, my feeling was, at the time, that they didn't understand what American interests were in Southeast Asia. So I thought they were misguided. And I thought, like the demonstration at the '68 convention, I thought that wasn't the way to get your message across. There were better ways to influence decisions than having violent demonstrations. So that was my thought at the time. Now keep in mind that the 40s and the 50s had been relatively peaceful politically. We were successful in fighting the Second World War. The soldiers came back, soldiers, sailors, all the service people came back from that war as heroes. So when I saw in the 60s, people were not considering the veterans of Vietnam as heroes, that was also very disappointing. So it changed from what was kind of peaceful times to very turbulent times.
Well, I recall the 60s because that's where I'm from too. And I don't know if you were aware of this, but the very first high school in the nation to have a walkout was Lakeshore High School. And 5 of us organized it. We were part of the SDS movement. And yes, I am definitely ashamed of the fact that I protested against the Vietnam War, because I think what we did was a horrible thing to our veterans. So when you were living in what city when you were in that period of time?
I was living in Los Angeles at the time.
You grew up in Los Angeles?
I did.
So,
and also, it was kind of a disturbing decade because I worked for John Kennedy's campaign in late 50s, early 60s. I admired him a lot and thought that he was a president who one could look up to, and that he gave us some stature in the world. And his assassination was very devastating.
Do you remember that day?
I certainly do.
Do you remember where you were at?
Yeah, I was in my office when it happened, and we didn't have a TV. I'd heard it on, somebody had come in and said the president's been assassinated. So I walked across the street. There was a drugstore called Thrifty Drugstore across the street, and they had a food counter, and they had the TV on. So I spent probably a couple of hours there just watching what transpired with the Kennedy assassination. So it was a very sad, very disappointing day.
Yeah, I was in 6th grade at the time, and we were all in school, and they sent us home. So I remember that, thoroughly in my brain. It was a very, very sad moment that we were able to see this. One of the things that I realized was that Vietnam War was the very first war that we saw on TV. How did you feel about that?
I think that made a difference. It came into everybody's living room. They saw what war really is. American people hadn't had a chance to know what war really was, but now it was in their living rooms and they saw it, and they didn't like it. There was a lot of objections, and a lot of people felt that we shouldn't have been there, and that certainly opened for debate whether we should have gone into Vietnam or not. I know at the time a lot of people felt that if we didn't stop the communists in Vietnam, there was the talk about the domino theory. If Vietnam fell, then all of Southeast Asia would fall, and one would lead to another.
Can we kind of compare that to what's going on now with the Middle East? If one country falls underneath...
Yeah, in a way we can. There is... The difference is that... who we were fighting in the Vietnam War were states. The state of Vietnam, the state of Cambodia. They had their armies, and that's who we were fighting. In the Middle East, you do not have state-organized militias. They are independent groups, independent from state governments, at least for the time being, although it appears the trend is that these Islamist extremists are going to wind up being the government. So we may, in some of the countries in the Middle East. So we may wind up fighting states, but right now we're fighting kind of amorphous organizations.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to how much has America changed from the 40s, from the 50s until now? I mean, what have you seen a difference in? Because we're going to get into current events also on the show. So, if you're watching the show, right now we're just kind of we're putting down the foundation, and then we're going to be getting into a little bit of the current events, what I'm very excited about. So, how much has it changed from the 40s till now?
Well, it's changed a lot in the fact that Americans in the 40s and 50s and 60s were very anti-communist, anti-socialist. They didn't want big government running things. They wanted freedom from government and the freedom to be an entrepreneur and do what you want pretty much without interference. For various reasons, between the 1960s and today, more and more people have been taught that big government is good, capitalism is not, that individual freedom is not that important. And so you have a larger percentage of the population today that is okay with the government telling you what to do.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that because I don't want to be told to wear a seatbelt. Okay? I think I'm an adult. I should make up my mind if I want to wear a seatbelt or not. And I think that it's unfair for all these different laws that have been passed. I mean, everything has changed from the 60s and from the 50s. And one of the questions I want to ask you, we wanted to make a difference in the 60s. Now the people that are running our governments are people from the 60s. Do you think we've made it any better, Gary?
Do I think the fact that those people are now running the country made a better country than we had then?
Yes, that's a
No,
hard
I do not.
You know, you can always you can always do the fifth on some of these questions. You know,
Right, I think you knew my answer to that.
Yeah. I guess we're going to get into that. So, thinking back, you know, to years and years back, let's talk about Watergate, okay? What do you remember about it and why?
I remember it happening, and I remember being disappointed in Richard Nixon for organizing it. And in fact, I was kind of hoping at the time that it would turn out that he wasn't behind it, that these guys kind of did it on their own. When I found out that he was the person that put them up to it, I became somewhat disillusioned with Nixon.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between Watergate and some of the scandals today, such as Benghazi, in that Watergate was, they sent people into the Democratic headquarters to try to get some information. Mm-hmm. Nobody was killed. Nobody was even in danger. But with some of the scandals that have taken place under this administration, people have been killed, and people have been put in danger. So there's quite a difference in degree. So that's my differentiation between Watergate and now.
Well, we have quite a few scandals going on in our government at the moment, but we're going to get to that topic. But what I want to ask you is, we're also the children of Saturday Night Live and the stand-up comedians coming out and doing all of their crazy stunts on the TV, you know, glued to TV. Okay, what difference are the comedians doing now than they were doing in the past? I mean, there is a difference, and I've noticed it. Do you have any idea what any frame of mind that you would like to add into this?
Well, you have to understand that Hollywood was, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe even the 70s, was pretty well balanced between left and right, between Democrat and Republican. Most of the studio owners were Republicans. A lot of the actors were Republicans. And there's been a shift over the years so that both the entertainment industry has become predominantly, and when I say predominantly, maybe in the 90% left, Democrat, just like academia. So the left has taken over the entertainment industry, the education industry, and the media. So it's not as balanced as it was at one time earlier in our lifetimes.
So do you think that really, puts a big impact on our elections because of the...
Oh, yes, definitely. The people look to the media, and they look to Hollywood, and they look to their universities for guidance on how to vote and as to what to do. And they're really only getting one point of view, a single point of view. It's not a balanced point of view. So sure, more people are voting liberal than conservative because that's what they see being presented to them.
I have seen a lot of newscasts or people going out and doing interviews and interviewing people. And people don't have an idea of anything about current events, what's going on. They don't have, some people don't even know who vice president is. I mean, and these are our voters. What would you say to a voter if they're going to go out and vote? What would you tell them and give them advice on voting?
Well, you asked the difference between the earlier part of our lifetimes versus now. I believe that voters were more informed and more educated in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. I think voters today, like you said, I mean, if you watch Jay Leno walking on the street with his microphone and asking people questions, you'll find that there's a great deal of ignorance.
Yeah.
It's very bad for the country because our founders felt that a democratic republic, a constitutional republic, could only be maintained if there was an educated populace. And the more the populace is uneducated, the more likely they are to vote, to be influenced, to vote against their own best interest.
I find that a lot of young people, and even adults that I know, are so busy with their lives. And I've talked to them about current events, and they look at me as if I'm talking a different language. I am so shocked that so many friends of mine do not go out, do their own research, and educate themselves. To me, I think that's scandalous. I think... I'm going to keep my personal opinion out of this one. Wait a minute. Let's talk about scandals.
I can give you what I think is an explanation for that. When I was young, and even when my kids were young, schools used to teach civics. They used to teach American history in a way that made students proud to be Americans. Mm-hmm. They taught government in a way that they explained why people needed to be informed about what's going on in their country and their government. And they celebrated the exceptional country that we live in. That doesn't happen much anymore. The schools don't do that. So you have people leaving the school system without the background and understanding about government and civics that we had in our day.
I think with the technology that we have, I don't think that there should be anybody that isn't informed. And I think that, when I do research, when I'm interested in finding a topic about something, especially when I was, during the elections, I went on both sides and I read and I read and I read and I educated myself. We don't have an excuse as a community here in the United States. We don't have.
I think a lot of people feel their vote doesn't count. It doesn't matter. And they're wrong about that. People have won elections, particularly local elections, with a handful of votes. Whereas if more people had come out and voted, that might have changed the end result. There is in politics today, there is a phrase used to define uninformed voters, and it's called low information voters. And there's a whole political strategy about how you appeal to low information voters. There shouldn't be low information voters. They should really. The other thing that causes people not to be as informed is that the mainstream media, the newspapers and the TV news, used to provide the population with facts, with news, with what was really going on. And so they became informed through their newspapers and through their TV stations. That no longer takes place. So people just don't get it. They don't understand what's going on in the world.
Well, speaking of the news, let's talk about the media, because the media is really it's got an important voice. It's got a very important voice. I want to ask you this one question. It's why is Fox News the #1 rated news channel? Why MSNBC and CNN, they're coming in last in the rating? What is Fox News doing right? I mean, they're bagged on all the time. I want to know, when you tell somebody you listen to Fox, this is what you get. Oh, you don't listen to that TV station. I mean, but it's the #1. Why?
People, first of all, people who say that have been brainwashed, from the president all the way down to other Democratic leaders, who try to convince people not to watch Fox because it doesn't give you the truth. Mm-hmm. Well, the fact is, Fox probably doesn't give you 100% of the truth, but it gives you more of the truth than any of the other stations. And people sense that. They know when they're being lied to. They know when somebody is taking a particular point of view that may not be giving you the whole picture. So when they watch MSNBC or NBC or CNN even, they know they're not getting the whole truth. But people want to watch Fox because they get more of the truth than they're going to get anywhere else.
Well, we've been having a lot of scandals lately. I mean, lots of scandals. I mean, they're coming out of the woodwork. I mean, one after another. Okay, why is it that our media in the United States is the last in reporting this? When, a lot of the scandals are reported in The Guardian in the UK. It's like the first newspaper to report on these scandals. I mean, what's wrong with our mainstream media here in the United States? Why aren't we getting the stories first?
Because you have to understand that this is not an objective media. They will censor anything that puts the president in a bad light. And so they don't give you the news. They give you the news that fits the leftist agenda. There are no conservatives, or very, maybe a handful on any given newspaper or any TV station. You're not getting both sides of the issue. You're getting a single point of view, and if it doesn't conform to their agenda, which is to support the president, you're not going to hear about it.
Gary, when did this shift? When did this start? I mean, when did the news media do this switch turnabout like this? I mean, we didn't have this in the 60s and the 70s.
No.
When did this happen?
The journalism schools have been attracting people who are liberal. They've been attracting leftists. So we now have 2 generations of people who have graduated from journalism schools who have a particular political point of view. And they are the ones who populate the news media, papers, TV, and all the Hollywood, all the media are primarily people on the left, and they want to propagate their own point of view. And right now, their point of view is that this president can do no wrong, and they're not going to publish anything that shows him in a bad light.
But wasn't that also during the Clinton administration?
Yes, it's been, as I say, a couple of generations, probably 50 years.
Yeah,
This has been going on, gradually increasing.
I've been seeing this more and more. And one of the things that really I don't comprehend, why are the Democrats and people that are in the media so angered by the Tea Party? I don't understand. I can't comprehend that. I don't know.
Angered by the Tea Party.
I don't know why. I can't understand the reason why.
They're angered by the Tea Party because the Tea Party presents a real threat. They recognize that the Tea Party are ordinary Americans. They're not anybody special. They're not extremists. They're Americans who are unhappy with the direction of the country. They're Americans of all stripes. They're not just Republicans. They're Democrats, they're independents, they're blacks, they're Asians, and whites. So this could be a threat to the Democrats. And therefore, they try to diminish the Tea Party whenever they can.
Okay, Tea Party, IRS. We're going to go into it. Okay, because I'm here to learn. Gary, I'm here to learn. I'm here to hear your point of view, and maybe next week we'll have a Democrat on, and he'll give me their point of view. But today, yeah, I would love, your perspective about the IRS scandal. Steve Miller, Lois Lerner, the new Holly Paz. I'd love to know what your views are about this and why. Why were they targeting the Party and patriots and so forth and so on?
Well, the president told them to. He told them in very indirect ways, but he still told them to. He went I think it was 2010, prior to the 2010 election, he was giving speeches about how these right-wing groups are taking foreign money and are taking money from we don't know who and doing all sorts of things with it. And he painted a whole picture of conservative groups that, and he kept saying, we ought to be looking into this. We shouldn't be letting them get away with it. Well, people who are loyal to him in the bureaucracy and in the administration are going to follow his direction. And so the IRS leadership took it upon themselves to decide that they were going to give these conservative groups a rough time and try to prevent them from becoming organized, because they wanted to still those voices. They wanted to keep them from having a voice. Now, the commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service, in the 8 years that President Bush was president, met with him a total of 11 times. The commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service has met with Barack Obama in 4 years, a total of 187 times.
Do you think they were?
So why? Well, you can't tell me that the president is not giving him direction. So that's why.
But I don't. Is there a paper trail to all of this?
No. No, there won't be a paper trail. There will be within the Internal Revenue Service. They'll find out who the leaders were within the Internal Revenue Service, who directed them to give the conservative organizations a rough time. And that'll start with Lois Lerner, and it'll be Holly Paz below her, and there'll be a whole list of people. But there will not be a paper trail to the president.
So we'll really never find the truth.
Probably not.
You know, that's pretty disconcerting, and I'll tell you the reason why. Oh, I don't know if I should say this. There was a lot. There was a lot of no paper trails to Hitler on some of the actions that the SS troops and the SS people did during World War II. Hitler didn't sign off on a lot of things, but they knew what he wanted, and they did his bidding. That's my concern. I mean, it's kind of frightening, but you know, I'm not saying
exactly what's happening here. It's true in the State Department. It's true in the Internal Revenue Service. See, what happens is you have these entrenched bureaucracies in these all these agencies. They will be there forever. They were there before Obama. They'll be there after Obama, and they consider it. And that's the real government of the United States. That's who really runs things. And they consider it their duty to be loyal to the president and to do his bidding. So that's why you're getting all of this stuff coming out.
Does it matter any president or just this president? Or is it just the presidency?
Most of the bureaucrats in Washington are Democrats and are left. So they're going to do the bidding of the Democratic presidents more so than the Republican presidents.
The scandals that are going on right now, and I only hear them on Fox. And they're starting to leak out other places. It's taken a long time for them to leak out to other places. You know, we have the James Rosen with the AP story. If you were, I want to ask you,
those are separate stories.
They're separate, yeah. But if you were in the news media and you were a reporter, how would you feel about this?
I would feel very upset about it. And I'm sure James Rosen is, and I'm sure the AP is. It's the kind of dirty tricks that we, said dirty tricks about Lincoln, about Nixon, that he did. And everybody was up in arms. They wanted to impeach him. In fact, they were going to impeach him if he hadn't resigned. But that won't happen with Obama. These scandals will go on. It's a shame the way the administration is abusing the government against the people, but nothing is going to happen in my view. Until the people get so fed up that they decide that it's time to change the administration in 2016. But until then, nothing's going to happen with this administration.
Okay, let's say there is a change, and you talked about there are certain people that govern this country. Is it going to change? What will be different if the Republicans come in the next term? What will be different than it is right now?
Well, that's hard to predict because we don't know who the president will be. And we don't know who the Republicans will be who will come in. So there is no, in the Democratic Party, there's pretty much a unity of agreement on policy. In the Republican Party, there are differences of opinion on policy. So it'd be difficult to make any prediction at this stage. But if they follow Republican policies of reducing taxes and reducing spending and limiting government to the limits that were put on it within the Constitution, we should see prosperity once again in the United States.
What mistakes do you think that the Republican Party made during the last election? I mean, is it blamed because of the news media? I mean, what really happened?
I don't think that there was any candidate we could have put up for election that would have beat Barack Obama in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying we had the best candidate. I don't think we did. But even if we had a better one, I think people were predisposed to vote for Barack Obama, and I don't think Republicans could have won. The people generally wanted to give him another 4 years for various reasons, and they were determined to do that.
Mm-hmm. One of my pet peeves, and I'm going to go across the board with the Republicans and the Democrats on this one. Okay, it is my pet peeve during political races. Okay, as a woman, okay, as a woman, I am so tired of hearing my right to choose as a format to run campaigns on. Women have been used over the last 30 some or 40, wow, 30 years ago. We've been used, you know, it's been used over our head. I mean, I think it's an atrocity. I really do. I don't think that it should be in the political campaign. I think Roe versus Wade, and this is my opinion, only my opinion, but I'm sick of us women being used as a target to gain vote and scaring people. Well, if you vote this way, they're going to have your rights taken away. Well, if you vote this way, you know, other things are going to have their rights taken away. I mean, I think women have been used.
Well, here's the thing. There is a segment of the Republican Party that is pro-life and opposed to abortion. But I'm a libertarian. I lean very strongly libertarian. And I don't believe that the social issues are the purview of government. I think government ought to stay out of those issues. And the way they come up is not because some Republican candidate brings it up. If you will notice, every time the issue comes out, it's because somebody in the media asks the question. And
I agree
so
with you.
Republicans don't have that as their key issue and as, you know, what drives the party. But there are people who believe that abortion is bad. So when they're asked by the media, that's how they're going to respond. But I don't believe that elections ought to be decided on that issue. For example, no president can change the law. Roe v. Wade is a settled legal precedent. It has been for 33 years. Popular sentiment would not allow it to be changed. So the issue is really moot. Nobody can really do anything about it. So the media brings it up because they want to scare people into voting Democrat.
I agree with
and so that's what happens. People are scared over nothing because no matter what Republican is elected, he can't change the law.
No, I agree with you, and I think it is. I kind of notice that when the election starts to shift a little bit, where one side is building up a little bit of more momentum, all of a sudden that's thrown in. And to me, I think women need to stand up and say, this is the law. We understand this. We know this is not going to be turned around. You're not going to use our votes and scare us. I really believe that, and I get very angry during elections when this happens. It really, you can swear on my show. It really pisses me off.
It's a manipulation by the left and by the media to scare women into not voting Republican.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, let's talk about the NSA. So give me your opinion of our young man, Ed, who's in Japan, who basically he's been doing Google Hangouts and telling his side of the story. I mean, people are saying that he's committed treason. He should be prosecuted. He should be put to death. I mean, tell me your views about this.
If there is something going on in the country that people should know about, there are ways to bring it to the public. What he did is not one of them. He signed an oath of secrecy when he was hired to work for the NSA. He violated that oath. Whether that rises to the level of treason, I don't know, but it certainly rises to the level of breaching his contract. Now, if, as I've heard, he is giving secrets to the Chinese about our activities in monitoring them, that is treason. And so I do not appreciate the way he did that. By the way, is it really a surprise to anybody that the NSA is monitoring phone calls and emails? We heard about that under George Bush. It's no big secret. We knew for many years that we have really no expectation of privacy. So if he is endangering American security by providing secrets to the Chinese, I think he ought to be prosecuted. If he violated his security oath, I think he ought to be prosecuted for that. But there are what are called whistleblower avenues. If you want to tell about something the government's doing, there are legal ways to do it without violating your oath. So I don't think he did a good thing.
What do you think What do you think is in store for him? Do you think he's going to be coming back to the United States? Will be prosecuted?
I think the smartest thing he could do would be to come back to the United States, say, I did it because I felt the public should know about it, and take his chances on what the result will be. If he continues to run and hide, and if he continues to disclose any further American secrets to foreign countries, I think the future for him is not good.
Yes. I think we need to know more information about what he's actually doing before we make a conclusion. And that's, like I said, research, listen, find out as much as you can find out. And I think that's what our government needs to do. When you got a lot of people that are running around right now, I mean, saying that he should be executed. I mean, I think this is ridiculous. I mean, let's hear his side of the story. Let's find out exactly what he'll be running for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Right. So we got questions from the audience?
I've been so busy talking to you. Let's see. Oh, yeah, we do. We have Melissa McGuire. She wants to know if Joe McCarthy was good or bad. And did he have a legitimate concerns, or was he just a big crybaby?
Joe McCarthy was exactly right. There were communists in the military who were undermining the United States. His tactics and his approach off-put a lot of people, but his assertion that the military was had communists in it that were undermining U.S. policies was exactly correct.
Do you remember the hearings live on TV?
I remember them well. I watched them, most of them.
I was a little too young. I'm a little bit younger than you are. I was a little bit too young, but I remember visually inside of my head. I remember seeing and people talking about that, And I think that America, I mean, my people were building bomb shelters. I mean, people were scared.
Well, the building of bomb shelters, yes, it was a difficult time. We were in a Cold War. Communism was a danger to the country.
Mm-hmm.
And he was trying to bring the truth of that to the American people. And he was undermined because those who had communist sympathies or communist leanings in the government tried to paint him as an evil person.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not a very likable person. So it worked well.
With some more comments from the chat room. Steve says, I think the scandals are just a wishful thinking from the Republican parties trying to take the blame off of Bush. This is, come on, Fox, is this the only network making a big deal out of this? I guess they are mad just losing at the election. I mean, this is what a lot of people feel.
Well, let me ask Steve if he thinks that the fact that 4 Americans died in Benghazi is a scandal or not. We have never failed to go into a country to rescue Americans in danger.
Mm-hmm.
We told our military to stand down and let these people die. So I consider that a scandal. Maybe Steve doesn't. I consider a scandal when the IRS is targeting a particular point of view at the direction of the president. I consider it a scandal when the NSA is targeting a particular reporter and reading his phone calls and his emails because they don't like what it is he's reporting. These are scandals. And the reason that Fox is the only station reporting them, besides that they're all over the internet, there are a lot of, you can find all about them, but that ABC, CBS, and NBC aren't reporting them is because they're trying to protect the president.
More questions about the scandals, more questions in the chat room. Gary said, well, Irv says, Gary, will all of the scandals going with all of the scandals going on with the Republican Party, what would the Republican Party do different in the next elections? And what do you think they should do different in the next election?
Well, one of the problems we have in campaigning is that we don't know how to give our message to the American people in a way that they can understand it. We're very poor at messaging. The Democrats know how to do it. They do it well. And they know how to paint Republicans as being bad guys very well. And people accept it without challenge. Mm-hmm. So I think we have to improve our ability to message what it is we really stand for and what we believe. And I don't think people truly understand that. So that's one way I think we can make a difference in the next election.
It's going to be pretty interesting to see who's going to be running the next election. Do you think Hillary Clinton has... Do you think Hillary Clinton will be running for the President of the United States, and do you think that she has a capability of winning?
The answer to both questions is yes.
And how would that impact our government?
It depends on how fed up America is with the current government's policies, because Hillary will be more of the same. Mm-hmm. So if they like the policies of the current administration, then they'll support Hillary. If they feel it's time for a different point of view and a change in policies, then they won't.
There's a new poll that's out today on Fox, and it says, what best describes how you feel about the country's political leaders? 23% said confident and proud. 71% said, "Is this the best we can do?" Do you think that time is ready for people to really start looking at our political leaders and really making better decisions? Do you think they're starting to get that up?
I'm hoping that it's time. It's been time for a long time. People are not paying attention to what is going on, and that's the main problem.
I agree with you on that. Listen, Amy Soapbox says, Gary, do you think that the Supreme Court sent out the wrong message? Oops, it just moved. Somebody just wrote in there. Hold on.
I know her question.
Oh, do you think this? Okay.
She wants to know if the Supreme Court made the wrong decision in its Arizona decision, where it told Arizona it didn't have the right to question people who are applying for register to vote, whether they're citizens or not. The Supreme Court could not have decided that issue any other way, and let me tell you why. In 1993, the federal government put through what is called colloquially the Motor Voter Act. And I think its title is the National Right to Vote Act or something like that Arizona signed on to along with many other states. And in that law that Arizona agreed to, along with other states, it says that you have no right to question anybody who registers to vote with anything that isn't on the federal form. The federal government provides a form for people to register. And you're not able to, under that law that Arizona agreed to, you're not able to ask a voter whether he's a citizen or not. Stupid, but here's what happened. Along with that motor voter law came money. And the states wanted the money, so they gave up their rights to question whether voters are citizens or not in order to get the federal money. Federal money is toxic. It's poisonous. It causes governmental agencies to give up their rights. It causes people to give up their rights to get money. And so Arizona waived its rights to question voters as to whether they're citizens or not by signing on to that law. So really what this issue was about was, does Arizona have the right to modify the federal form to ask for proof of citizenship? And the Supreme Court ruled no, because that's what the law says. So they did say in their ruling that the states can use other ways to determine if the voter is a citizen or not, but they can't ask them. So if you consider this to be a stupid law, I probably agree with you.
Yeah, I do consider this.
But it is the law.
I mean, my grandmother came from Italy, and she had to become a citizen to be able to vote. I mean, I really think that you should be a citizen to be able to vote. How important is the Hispanic voters in the elections now?
Well, there are two things I want to say about that. One is Hispanics have a feeling that Republicans don't like them. That isn't true. I'll go into why in a minute. But I don't believe the Hispanic vote is as important as many of my colleagues do. I don't think we ought to be having special outreach efforts to go and bring Hispanics into the Republican Party. I think what we have to do is stand on our principles, explain what we're for, and if Hispanics like our position, then they'll come to our party. but we're not going to be able to outspend the Democrats to win Hispanics over to our side, because we can give them more than the Democrats do. And it's all about what they can get by being Democrats. So I don't think it's that important. Hispanics vote in a rather low turnout. The more Americanized and the more assimilated they become, they vote like regular Americans. I'm not concerned about the Hispanic vote.
We have Missy in the chat room says, how do you expect Edward Snowden to do anything legally when absolutely everyone who is in the law enforcement federally is in the president's back pocket? That's a very bold statement.
Well, let me put it this way. When Edward Snowden did what he did, he knew he was breaking the law, and he knew there would be consequences. So he has to deal with those consequences in the best way he can. We are a nation of laws.
Yeah, we are a nation of laws. How important is our Constitution?
Our Constitution is critically important. You know, our founders were very wise men. When this country was put together, it was not put together with the idea of a major central government in Washington that would run everything for the states. These were independent states coming together, becoming united with the idea that they would maintain their own autonomy within their state. And that was guaranteed to them by the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment enumerated powers of the federal government, and it said any powers not enumerated in which the federal government, that gives power to the federal government, belong to the states and to the people. The 10th Amendment has been abrogated by our administration. Not this administration, but all of our administrations in the past 50, 60 years. And I'm a believer in the 10th Amendment and in states' rights. And I think the federal government is passing a lot of laws that are truly unconstitutional. And our Constitution is important because it guarantees freedom and liberty if you follow the structure. And it's relevant today as it was 240 years ago. So I am a strong constitutionalist. I believe the government should follow the Constitution.
Do we need more government or less? Hello?
The federal government is way too large.
Yeah.
It does a lot of things it wasn't intended to do. And Dennis Prager has a saying, the larger the government, the smaller the citizen.
Yes.
Big government restricts freedom. And government should be limited. When I say limited, it should be limited to the enumerated powers that was given in the Constitution. And beyond that, we do not need a federal government. We have state governments and local governments that will assume those duties. So yes, the federal government is way too big. There are departments in the federal government that we don't need, that could be cut out. It's a question of accumulating more and more power at the federal government and passing out goodies to voters so they'll keep them in power.
Do you think that the Republicans and the Democrats can work together for the betterment of our country better than they have in the past? Do you think there's a possibility?
It is possible. Compromise is the old saying is that compromise is the art of politics. Today we have people who take extreme positions, both on the left and the right, And it's very difficult for them to come together and compromise to produce legislation that will work for both. So Democrats don't get what they want, everything they want, and neither do Republicans, but they get a workable bill. I have a feeling this immigration bill that the Gang of Eight is working on now is going to fail because there are people on both sides of the aisle who aren't happy. So, yes, Democrats and Republicans, I think, worked better together in the past than they do today, and I think they need to work together.
In the beginning of our conversation, you brought up John Kennedy.
I brought up what?
John Kennedy. Okay.
Yes.
Do you think that John Kennedy, Harry Truman, and Franklin D. Roosevelt would feel comfortable with the Democratic Party of today?
Absolutely.
Why so?
The Democrats of today are not the Democrats of 40, 50, 60 years ago. The Democrats of today are essentially socialists. They want big government. They want to run people's lives. They feel that they know what's best for you better than you do. This is not the Democratic Party of Harry Truman or Franklin Roosevelt or even of John Kennedy.
Who were your mentors, and who do you look up to? Or who have you looked up to?
Well, my mentors are dead. I've read history. I've read American history. And there are a lot of American heroes who I consider to be my mentors. I've looked at politics in many ways, from many points of view. And my mentors are those that believe in freedom and liberty. And there are many leaders in American history that do that.
If you could fix one thing about our country, what would that be?
Well, all-encompassing, I guess, would be, there is no one thing. There are a lot of things that need to be fixed. But the one thing would be to let people have more personal freedom.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think it's really important. I think we've lost a lot of our freedoms throughout the last 30 or 40 years. Gary, because you're so involved in politics, any ambition of running for office of any sort?
Yes.
Did you say yes?
No. I help people get elected. No.
I like that.
I help people get elected. I'm not going to run for office myself.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better to operate behind the scenes than it is in front of the camera. So I understand that. Gary, this has been a really interesting conversation. I want to thank you so much for, coming onto the show and sharing with us your opinion. And I value that. And I really wish you lots of luck. And I hope to see you out there during the next election, campaigning for your candidate of the choice. And any last words you'd like to say to our audience?
Well, you can be sure of that. Yes, if anybody has questions of me that didn't get answered, then go to the website, greyhairlady.com, put your questions in the chat box, and I'll answer them.
They can also, what is your website again?
Yes, you can also go to allianceforliberty.org and leave comments there or ask me questions there. Or you can send me an email. Aminoff, GAMINOFF, @gmail.com.
Wonderful. And he's also on Facebook. I mean, you can get a hold of him
I'm
there.
on Facebook.
He's
I'm on Twitter.
He's on Twitter, Facebook. We need to get him on Pinterest. He needs to do his own show. He really does. I have really enjoyed this. This has been very enlightening. And I want to thank you, Gary Aminoff, for coming on to the show. And will you come back?
Of course. Just invite me.
Wonderful. And to all of the people that have watched the show and to all the people that will be watching the archives, please think before you vote for your next president or before you vote for laws. Think, do your research. Be educated first for voting in the United States. Don't just sit back. And I got to say, it's been really pleasant watching Gary throughout the last few years campaigning like he's been campaigning, because he's been all over the place. I followed it very, very closely. So, you know, use him as a role model to get out there and really, really fight for what you want. Because you know what, America's really important. And that's why we're having the shows, because we've been around long enough, we've been able to see it all. We've been able to see changes in our government, changes in our country, changes in our people. And we want to make this a better place to live. And we want to thank you all for watching. And you've been watching the Gray Hair Lady Show on greyhairlady.com. Thank you so much and have a great day.